Guys, welcome to your Wednesday morning lesson. Today we're going to work on our reading skill. This week it's going to be sequencing. I'm going to do a quick normal worksheet that we would do for our skills, and then what we're going to do is a ReadWorks activity using those skills. So it's going to be based off of sequencing for your questions. I did send it in a PDF attachment to your email. It is not uploaded on ReadWorks for you because it's not it's a practice assignment to get you ready for tomorrow's regular ReadWorks. Okay, tomorrow is going to be independent reading, which means tomorrow there's no video. You're going to go log into ReadWorks online with your class code and then complete the stories on your own. Today is guided reading, so normally we're in a small group at the middle group, or we might be in a large group as the classroom and go on ReadWorks when I do it on the smartboard with you and we read it together, we go through the questions. We're going to do that for today's assignment. So we're going to see how these work out. I'm trying to see what works best for us with this distance learning. I think that maybe doing a practice one first on Wednesday and then doing the real one that's online for you on Thursday might be an easier transition for you. So let's go with that. All right, let's share our screen. So today we are going to be working with sequencing. All right. Okay, so we have done sequencing before and we've applied it to fiction and nonfiction. So we know that usually in a fictional setting, we use our sequence words or time order words to tell the events that happen in a story, first, next, then last. We usually go from the beginning through the middle to the end. We talk about what characters are introduced and then the things that they do and the consequences that happen. And that usually leads to the order of a story. Now, if we are talking about a nonfiction setting, we may see sequencing being applied or used in the events of maybe a life cycle, right? In stages or in phases that animals or plants are going through and the changes that as they develop and evolve throughout their life cycle. So sequencing is a skill that we've used for both fiction and nonfiction, and we're going to apply it to the worksheet that we are about to do. Once again, if you do not have a printer and you are not able to print out the worksheets, that's fine. Follow along. You can just jot the answers down in your journal. When you send me pictures of your work, make sure it has today's date at the top. Whatever story or article or passage we're reading, make sure you put the title at the top of your page the same way we would do in our journals, whether we're doing stop and jots or four squares. So just make sure that you have the title of the passage that we're working with, and you can number your questions in order and do your assignment that way, okay? If you prefer to print out the worksheets and do that, please remember to put your name at the top, okay? Because some of your email addresses come from your parents, and then when they send me pictures, if your name is not on it, you know, I'm getting pictures from all 3 different classes of students. I want to be able to match a name with the work, okay? So just make sure you put your name at the top of your paper. Okay, so sequencing. Here's just a small example. It was a cute cartoon, little football player. It says, first the quarterback threw the ball to the running back, then the running back ran it to the end zone. Finally, the crowd went wild. So small sequence of events. That would be your beginning, middle, and end. All right, let's jump right into some familiar words that we see. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger for you. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Okay, so at the beginning of usually what we've been reading fiction, a lot of this, you can use these different phrases when you are writing, okay? When you're doing a reader response, a reflection, doing stop and jots, any of these would be a good version to use, okay? So sequencing words, beginning, in the beginning, it all started when? First, once upon a time, there's a fairy tale one for us, right? To begin, to start, once, first of all, one day. So those are good openers, right? If we are writing a story or we are trying to recap what just happened in a story, doing our stop and jots. As we get through the middle or the thick of a story, we may see or recognize many of these words that are familiar to us, or phrases. After a while, soon, meanwhile, suddenly, all of a sudden, next, then, second, after that, later. We've used a lot of these, are pretty common. At that moment, before long, eventually, afterward, and at this point. So a lot of those take place in the middle of the story as the events are unfolding. As we get near the end and we want to wrap it up, we may use phrases like this, or the author may use phrases similar to at last, finally, in the end, afterward, last, after all, lastly, by the end, by this point. Okay, so those are a bunch of our common or frequently seen sequencing words that pop up when we're reading or that we can use when we are writing. Okay, let's take a quick look over here at sequencing. So sequence, yes, is the order in which things happen in a story. Clue words such as first, next, then, finally, and last can tell you when something happens. So right up here, if you're looking where I'm looking, I'm gonna grab my highlighter. Usually when we are in small groups, I have you go up here and highlight those words, right? I would say, go highlight those words because when we see them in the story, we're gonna highlight them. So you can do that if you have the passage in front of you as you go through there. If you see a first, next, then, finally, or last, you can go and circle it, underline it, highlight it, whatever you would like. All right, let's read this passage together and then we will answer some questions. Tina's mother liked to watch rainbows. Tina decided to make her mother a rainbow. First, she found a large piece of white fabric. Okay, so I know you spotted it. Go and circle it, underline it, highlight it, whatever you would like to do. She sewed a row of red buttons to the fabric. Next, she sewed a row of orange buttons under the red buttons. Another sight word. Grab it while you see it. Then Tina found some yellow and green glitter. She used glue and made a row of yellow glitter and then a row of green glitter under the buttons. Okay, top of here on the right-hand side. Next, Tina found some blue fabric scraps. Get your transition word there, sequence word. She sewed the blue fabric under the green glitter. Then Tina found some violet buttons. She sewed a row of violet buttons under the blue fabric. There's another then. Finally, Tina made fabric loops to hang her rainbow. Right, we're at the end. Now her mother can see a rainbow anytime. Okay, so we got our sequence words that jumped out at us. We see what she's doing here. And if you can try to envision in your head what a rainbow looks like, then you know how we kind of order the colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Violet is another word for purple. So she's making her rainbow. Let's go down to answer our questions. All right, when did Tina sew orange buttons to her fabric? So really, when we're making a rainbow, let's see, can I make one up here? Kind of looking for a spare spot to make one. Can I make it over in the margin? Let's see. I wish I could put a picture of one over here. Let's see what's in the gallery. Where is the gallery? Gallery's over here. I'm going to pop on over to the other side so I can see if I can find a picture for you here. They don't give us any really good examples. What else is new, right? Our smart board. Okay, let's see if I can do. Okay, so we know that we're looking at the word orange here, yes? And we know that orange came after one color, and it also came before other colors. So when you are thinking of the order of a rainbow, maybe I can get a clip art. Let's see. Rainbow. Now it feels like you're back in class, right? We're stopping, we're Googling. All right, so let's grab this happy little rainbow here. I'm gonna pick this one because it starts with red. I like the other one, but it does not begin with red, so, all right. Now you know what's gonna happen, it's probably gonna appear huge, then we gotta shrink it. Oh, it's actually the perfect size. Okay, so let's put our rainbow here. Let's get that background out of the way. All right, so we've got our rainbow, okay? You move it out of the way so it's not where our sight words are. Okay, so they're asking us, I'm gonna underline it over here, when did she sew the orange buttons? So if we're starting with the colors of the rainbow, we know that she started with obviously white on the background, right? It says she sewed a row of red buttons. Next, she sewed a row of orange buttons. So how could we use sequence words to describe when the orange buttons were sewn on? In time order, she sewed them on after what? What was the very top layer? What color? Yes, the red. So when did Tina sew orange buttons to her fabric? After she sewed the red buttons. Okay, so if you are writing this in your journal, you're just going to number it number 1 and write that sentence next to it. If you are filling in your worksheet, perfect. Number 2 brings us to, what did Tina glue on the fabric after she sewed the red and orange buttons? So we have the red ones here. In the next sentence, we see she did the orange buttons. Now she's switching from buttons to another material or texture. She's being very creative. She's using many different things. So what did she glue on the fabric afterwards? Let's look at this paragraph next to then. Then Tina found some yellow and green glitter. She used glue and made a row of yellow glitter and then a row of green glitter under the buttons. So the first 2 rows are colored buttons. The next 2 rows in her rainbow are colored glitter. Okay, so she used yellow and green glitter. So for her first 2 colors, buttons, her next 2 colors, glitter, very creative, I like it. Number 3, when did Tina sew the violet buttons? And if you are taking a little bit to write your sentence, you can always hit that pause button on the YouTube video. Okay, I'm gonna keep going and reading them just because I don't like to keep dragging out the video, making it longer. They do take a while to upload, so I wanna get through our work and then move on to the next thing. You can always pause it to finish writing your sentence. Don't feel like I'm rushing you. When did Tina sew the violet buttons? Well, violet happens to be the last color. I know in this clip art, we have a dark purple and then a violet. The dark purple would be kind of close to something we call indigo. Violet is a little bit lighter shade of purple. So, but violet happened to be the last one that came after her blue, right? So think of these 2 purples kind of just being in the purple family together here for our quick rainbow demonstration. So if violet is the very bottom color, then she put them on what? Last, right? So when did Tina sew the violet buttons? What color came before them? What would she say? She sewed them under what? If we look back over here, right? Here we have her blue scraps. That gave her the blue strip for the rainbow. Then Tina found some violet buttons. She sewed a row of violet buttons under the blue fabric. So we can say she sewed, oops, sewed them last after the blue fabric. Because that was the last thing she put on her rainbow were those violet ones. What did Tina do last? Okay, so let's go up here to finally. She made fabric loops to hang her rainbow. So what she's doing is she's adding pieces of yarn, kind of like when we would add a loop to an ornament when you're done so that you can hang it on a tree, okay? She's adding loops to it so it can be hung up somewhere. So she made loops to hang her rainbow. Okay, so the last question, I'm going to bring our rainbow down here so that you can easily see it. It says, write the colors Tina used in the sequence she used them. Why do you think she did things in this order? So if we go back up, it is very easy for us to see what colors she used, okay? And we know this. She went in the order of the rainbow. Red, orange, yellow, green. You can start on that line. If you feel like there's not enough room, you can just bring it right down here. Blue, violet. And when they ask you why, you can say because that is the order, as the order of a rainbow. So colors do appear a certain way in a rainbow. We could leave this down here. They do appear a certain way in a rainbow. If you've seen a rainbow in a sky, if you've seen a real rainbow in a picture, the colors in a rainbow do appear in that order. They may be a little bit different. They may look very pastel. They may not be very as much as bold. I know when you color your rainbows, you color them any way that you want, but that is the correct order or the scientific order that we see when rainbows are made, when light hits them through droplets and they go through this prism. So if you haven't learned about that yet in science, I'm sure you will. But there is a reason that those colors are in that specific order. Okay, all right, so we have finished our worksheet. In the future, you may have one or two of these. It depends on what skill we're working on and how many sheets I can find on it for you, okay? Let's jump to our passage. It is called Return of the Bear. I don't remember if you had this one or if not. Sometimes we have them and then sometimes we have them in a paired passage to compare to other passages when we do test prep, when we started out doing test prep before we left for this quarantine. So you are going to see that your assignments on Thursdays are going to be a paired passage, just like the one we had with the lion in the house. Okay, remember that one with the little boy and he wakes up, there's a lion in his house. So we had that and we compared it to, I can't remember the other story that was with it. Some of you might. But we read two stories back to back. We answer questions separately about them, and then we compare and contrast them. So paired passages usually do that. But it also helps you work on those skills that we keep reviewing. So we'll have things in there about sequence. All right, so let's read this one together if you printed it out. If not, you can follow along in the video with me, okay? And just do the answers to the questions in your journal. All right, so the title says Return of the Bear. Underneath the picture, it says National Park Service. So what do we know about graphic images, right? We've talked about graphic images in a text, whether it's lots of nonfiction, right, informational text, especially when we were doing those zoo books. We get a lot of nice pictures and graphics, photographs from or illustrations sometimes that help us to understand the information that's given to us. So let's see what they're going to give us about grizzly bears. All right. Grizzly bears are huge, powerful animals. Thousands once lived in the western United States. In recent years, however, the number of bears has been very low. Over time, illegal hunting and habitat loss caused many bears to die off. I see that word cause, and I know we've done a lot of cause and effect. So when we potentially see this, a lot of times when we think of species dying off, we tend to quickly think of that word in our head, endangered, right? We think, well, they're not gone yet, but they're being killed off and they shouldn't be. So keep that in mind. They are being killed off, and hopefully they do not become an endangered species. They haven't used that word yet, so I think we're good. A habitat is a place in nature where an animal lives. The bear's habitat became smaller when people cut down trees to build homes and roads. So they're taking away, right? They're cutting out trees, they're taking away the forest land, which is making his home much smaller. That'd be like if somebody kept coming and putting up a fence and making your yard smaller and smaller and smaller. So they are taking away from his habitat. Many people thought they would never again see a grizzly in the West. Now wildlife officials say the bears are making a comeback. So let's see how they're doing that. We have done some articles that have showed us how scientists and different people with the animal reservations have tried to help increase the population with animals by protecting them and doing certain things to help that population instead of it going down, to help at least save it, stop it from going down, and then slowly to try to help bring it back up. So let's see what they're doing. Good news for grizzlies. Let me move out of your way here so we could see that. All right. Grizzly bears live in Yellowstone National Park and the surrounding forests. That area covers parts of the western states of Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. Today, more than 550 grizzlies live there. That is almost double the number that lived there in the 1980s. So that's a thumbs up, right? If the number is doubled, that means the population has been twice as much. You guys are doing multiplication, so you should know that. The bears living in the Yellowstone area have been protected by the Endangered Species Act. So here we go with the laws that help protect them. What are they telling people that they can't do? Wildlife officials say these bears may be taken off the endangered species list within the next year. So they actually are on the endangered species list then. They are on it. Hopefully, if enough of them are procreating and they're multiplying and their population is going up, then they will be taken off of that endangered species list. Remember, they're just talking about grizzlies. They're just talking about grizzly bears. It's a species of bear. We know that there are lots of different species, and we do know there are many different kinds in the forests. So, all right, let's see. It says that does not mean the bears will no longer be protected, grizzly bear expert Chris Serhine told Weekly Reader. We will continue to monitor them to make sure they are healthy. A lot of people are interested in making sure grizzlies survive. So even after the population comes up far enough for them to say, okay, we're good, they're not endangered anymore, they're still going to monitor them, which means they're going to observe. We've used that word before, to watch carefully, right? They're going to observe them. They're going to keep notes on them, keep files on them, different things like that to make sure that they are still thriving. We've used that word before with wildlife, to make sure that their populations are thriving and they are doing well, to make sure that they have enough food to eat, that there are enough other animals in that food chain and food web in their environment, and that people are not hunting them and killing them off, selfishly. So if you remember, we have talked about this before, the Endangered Species Act, with some other animals in previous nonfiction articles on ReadWorks. So that Endangered Species Act told us that they were not allowed to kill animals just for certain fun or sport, that, there were different things that went into it. It was a little complicated, but it was a law that was made to protect them from being killed. Remember when we were talking about like alligator and crocodiles? This even came up with the elephants with their tusks, right? The horns, the poachers that hunt them just for their skins, their body coverings, or in the elephant's case, the tusks, because they're made of ivory. So when we think about those animals that are poachers, they're not really hunting the animals to eat the meat, right? They just want to sell those outer body coverings of them because they can make a lot of money. They're not like Indians years ago, when the Indians used to use the bones for tools and use the meat for food and use the fur for rugs or blankets or clothing. They're not using all of the parts of the animal and really making something, you know, with that. They just want to get rich quick and kill off the animals for financial reasons and money-making reasons. So that's why this act was put into place. All right, let's get to our questions. All right, don't forget to put your name and your date at the top. And let's look at number 1. It says bears lost their habitat. Why? Let's look at our choices. After being taken off the endangered species list. Have they been taken off the endangered species list yet? Before trees were cut down, would they lose their habitat if there were still enough trees? Let's see if that makes sense. Bears lost their habitat before the trees were cut down. When we cut down the trees, that's when we were making room to build on that land, which means that would kind of be pushing them out. So think carefully, eliminate the ones that don't make sense, okay? After the trees were cut down, so after they cut down trees so that they could build on the land, would that make sense? Is that why bears are losing part of their habitat? Or after the Endangered Species Act? So think about this word here, habitat, okay? And habitat means their surroundings, their environment, where they live. Habitat means their home. So which one of these shows us that they lost their habitat, there was not enough room for them to live there, they were kind of pushed out, or it got a little kind of smaller and cramped after what took place? I am going to help you out with it. I'm not going to make you do it on your own. If you said after the trees were cut down, you are correct. After the trees were cut down, it left less space for them. You know, that'd be like a lot of people coming into your house and taking beds out of your house. Where are you going to sleep? There's less space for you to sleep, right? You can sleep on the floor, but it's uncomfortable. Well, what if they started filling up rooms in your house with junk just to store it? And there was no room for you to sit down on the floor or put a bed in there to sleep. If you started filling up your rooms with other people's stuff for them to store there, it wouldn't have enough space for you, right? So think of it that way. If people are filling up different rooms in your house with stuff and you can't use that room, whether to sleep, to play, and this and that, if it was filled to the walls with all kinds of boxes and junk, then you would not have as much space as before. So even though that room is there, if it's filled with something else that belongs to somebody else, that's less room for you. All right, which happened first? More than 550 grizzlies live in Yellowstone. Illegal hunting and habitat loss caused many bears to die off. Grizzly bears may be taken off the endangered species list, or thousands of bears live in the western states. So if you need to, we can go back to the passage, okay? Which of these happened first? That we know what the population is, that B, hunting made them become kind of endangered, that C, we're gonna take them off the endangered species list. Can we do that yet? No, right? So what you can do if you have this is you can eliminate and cross out. Okay, okay. It's just like school, hold on. Okay, just like at school, right? Phone rings. Interruptions. Okay, so we are back at question 2, and we are looking at to see which one happened first in the sequence order of the story, or not story, nonfiction. We did eliminate one answer. Remember we talked about this, elimination. So you can cross them off on your own. I'm not going to do everyone for you, but at least we know that they have not been taken off any list as of yet, so that can't be part of it. Then we can go back and look in the story. So more than 500 grizzlies live in Yellowstone National Park. Illegal hunting and habitat loss caused many bears to die off, or thousands of bears lived in the western United States. So let's use some tactics here to help us analyze these our answers. In letter D, down here, thousands of bears lived. We see an ED on the end of lived, which means it's past tense, right? It already happened. Here we crossed off the one that was future tense, okay? We do want to look for something that happened first, so we're going to leave that one. Illegal hunting and habitat loss caused many bears to die off. Caused also has an ED, so that does mean it happened in the past. And this one is present tense. It says more than 550 grizzlies live in Yellowstone National Park. So that means they are looking at the population this very moment, present day. So B and D take place in the past. A is taking place in the present. So we want to see which one happened first. So we are going to eliminate the one that is present tense. Okay? So watch carefully how we eliminate and narrow down. Now, both of these, past tense. So let's see. Was it the hunting that caused them to die off? Or are we talking about thousands of bears lived in the Western United States? Which happened first? So let's go back. Grizzly bears are huge, powerful animals. Thousands once lived in the Western United States. Okay, so that was one of the sentences, right? We're talking about them living there in the United States. In recent years, however, the number of bears has been very low. Over time, illegal hunting and habitat loss caused many bears to die off. Okay, so there we have it. This one was, I believe, choice, let's see, B. Okay, they did reverse them here. I know B comes before D, but the first one that they mentioned was that they lived in the United States. The second one was about the hunting. So now we look here, the first one that they mentioned had to do with what? Thousands of bears lived in the Western United States. So your answer would be D. Okay, which happened last. Last. So let's go here and we can highlight our answer. Sorry, it's a little crooked. Which happened last. Thousands of bears lived in the Western United States. Well, right away we can cross that one off because we know that that happened first, right? That's the same sentence we just saw up here that happened first. Thousands of bears lived in the Western United States. So obviously that's not something that happened last in the story. Illegal hunting and habitat loss caused many bears to die off. We know that was kind of our second thing, right? It happened right after that first comment with them living in the Western United States. More than 550 grizzlies live in Yellowstone National Park. Grizzly bears might be taken off the endangered species list. So now they're asking us which happened last. So if something didn't happen yet, remember we talked about that future tense? Grizzly bears may be taken off the endangered species list, meaning in the future they may be taken off. They're not off it right now. So if it happened, it did not happen yet and it's going to happen in the future tense, so they're hoping, can't be one of our selections because they want to know in the article they gave us what happened last. So it's between these two, illegal hunting caused them to die off, or more than 550s live in Yellowstone National Park. So let's go back and see. We have that one already underlined about the habitat loss causing them to die off. And following that closely, they're telling us that grizzly bears live in, oops. They're telling us that they do live there, yes, in Yellowstone National Park. And then here they tell us that there are 550 grizzlies. So they kind of combine that into this answer, right? They're telling us that more than 550 grizzlies live there. This is where they live, Yellowstone National Park. So it is mentioned, it's just kind of in two separate sentences. Here we see the Yellowstone National Park. Here we see the population number. Okay, so which one of these happened last? So what's the last thing that they mentioned? That now we know there are more than 550 grizzlies there, right? We know that there are definitely more than there were because it says right here, if we look in our paragraph, it says that is almost double the number that lived there in the 1980s. So they're telling us that number has increased. Okay. Now let's move over to number 4. This passage is it an autobiography? We talked about autobiographies. We looked at autobiographies in class, and we know that that is a book that a person writes about their own life. So was this book about a person? Number 1, was it even about a person? No, right? So we can eliminate that one. If it was written about a person, we would have to look at the author's name because an autobiography means it was written by that person themselves. A biography means it was still written about a person, but somebody else wrote a book about them. So we don't have to worry, our book was not written about a person, so it's definitely not an autobiography. Fiction, is it fiction? Is it fake? Were there characters? Was there a story plot with a beginning, middle, and end to it? No. Was it a biography? Was it a book that was written about a person's life? Even if it was written by somebody else who knew them? No again. So it just so happens. Hey, hey, hey. Stop it, I'm filming. Stop it. That it is nonfiction. It is an informational passage. And it was about not a real person, but real things. It was about grizzly bears. Okay, looking at number 5, we have what was the author's purpose in writing this passage? So if you remember up on our board in the classroom, we did have that pie, right? When we talk about author's purpose, we have pie, and we usually look at which slice of pie are we talking about? Is it the P for persuading or convincing them to see your point of view? Is it I, to inform you? Are they giving you information? Do they want you to learn something, right? Teaching or giving information to the reader. Or that E for entertain. Remember, entertain also means for your enjoyment, right? Just to read it, or whichever, for your enjoyment, to hold the attention of the reader through enjoyment. So there you have your E for entertain, and also the word enjoyment is down there as well. I know that we also talked about that E meaning express, for expressing feelings, yes? Okay, but we kind of said that usually when we're talking about expressing feelings, that comes a little bit later in the year when we're talking about poetry. So that's why it's not on the chart that I showed you in this one. So let's think, persuade, inform, or entertain. What was the author's purpose in writing this passage? Were they trying to persuade you to see their point of view about grizzly bears? Yes or no? Were they informing you or giving you information about the grizzly bears? Or were they entertaining you with a story like Goldilocks and the Three Bears? So I'm going to leave you to answer number 5 on your own. Okay. I think we can all agree that it was not a fictional story, so we do not need to use entertain. Okay. So go ahead and tell me if it's persuade or inform. And this is going to get you in gear for tomorrow's reading passage that you are going to do on your own. So I'm going to stop that here. I'm going to give you a quick, there is no video for tomorrow. You're just going into ReadWorks with your class code. So let me show you this. I did leave some extra practice time for you to work on sequencing with some IXL skills. Okay, so I did star them off. It would be under writing strategies. I know it should be under reading, but they put them under writing. It says identify time order words and use time order words. Time order words means sequence, okay? So you're gonna find them under the writing strategies part under language arts. Now, tomorrow for Thursday, what you're going to do is log into ReadWorks. We're still working on the same skill. So I found a paired text, which means there are 2 stories. See the 2 pictures overlapping? The first passage is titled Fixing My Sister's Bike. The second passage is titled Running Like a Pro, meaning professional. Okay, so both of these passages are going to have questions that go with them. I believe there are 2 on the first passage and then 2 on the second. And then after you're done reading both of them, there's 2 questions that go back and compare and contrast the 2 stories to each other. Okay, so the questions that you answer for each story or each passage will have something to do with sequence and order. Okay. And then at the end, you are going to be doing a little of that, probably compare, contrast. All right, here are your logins. So if you forgot your class code, find your homeroom below. If you forgot your logins, they are always posted on my website. Okay, so you can always find them there. If you find them here, a good idea would be to write down your login inside your journal cover. Okay, So I keep getting lots of emails with people who forgot their logins and their class codes. So make sure you write this down somewhere and keep it safe. Okay, so tomorrow, that's what your assignment is. You're going to log into ReadWorks. You're going to do the paired passage texts and questions, and then your online practice skill after that would be to, I'm just going to tell you to go into RazKids and continue practicing. Okay, I'm going to back this up a little bit, zoom out a little bit. Okay, so if you are 3R, your login password is the fish. If you are in 3 Doherty, your login password, once you find your homeroom, is a strawberry. And if you are in Miss Sundell's class, your password is the carrot. We did change them because when we were using the same laptop after another student, people were going in and messing with other people's accounts. So some people would forget to log out. And even though other people should have just logged out for them and logged into their own account, they were touching things that didn't belong to them and using up their points and changing their avatars and whatnot. And now that you're all at home and remote learning, we probably won't have those problems. So all of your passwords are here. When you log in, it's Roselli 3 for your grade, and then the initial of your homeroom. So if you're Roselli's homeroom, then it's R. If you're Miss Doherty's, it's D. And if you're Miss Sundell's, it is S. Okay, your website is here, your classroom login's here, and your passwords are here. So make sure you are using those and you continue to practice. Okay? All right, so that's all, guys. I miss you, and I will see you soon. Okay? Have a great weekend.